I think the best use of this time is to help you think. I will talk at you. I'll present some information, but it's nothing new. You've probably seen it before. You can't hear me? Yes. Let's try that. Is that better? Yeah. Better again? Okay. I was just saying I could help you think in this session, and you'd be just thinking because you couldn't hear me, so that would be okay, wouldn't it? Yeah, there's information, but if you can think, or if you can go away from this session with an action, a first step regarding your leadership style, that's a successful outcome. So I may not even talk all the time. I'll give you some space as well. It's a confusing world, isn't it, that we're doing business in. You've got this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. We've got pressures from technology, like MT, challenging the way we do business, challenging the way we manage our customer relationships, our partnerships. Economies are uncertain around the world. Events on another side of the globe will change the way we do business and change our costs. Trade is changing. You've got the Donald, you've got Brexit. Who knows what that will mean for us? Social media changed the way we recruit, the way we interact with our customers, the way we communicate with our partners, the way we sell. Millennials, what does that mean? How do we manage them in the workforce? And are they the same as the rest of us, just younger? Or do they bring new challenges and new opportunities? In this environment, we need leadership, as ever. And leadership has been studied and written about so much in recent decades. I mean, hundreds and thousands of books and papers and research articles, courses and systems and principles have been generated. And actually, leadership has been talked about for thousands of years. From ancient times, we've wondered why certain people make good leaders. Why do people follow certain styles? Why were some people successful and others not? Where do we get our models of leadership? Have you ever stopped to think? If you're a leader, I presume you are, otherwise you wouldn't be in this room. Why do you lead in the way that you do? What influences you? What shapes your leadership style? Is it these kind of models? You know, here we have some from industry, for instance. And you have leaders who are very successful but quite different. Richard Branson and Steve Jobs, both driven in their own way, but one very open and entrepreneurial and freewheeling, the other very driven and controlling and very dominant. Or we've got political leaders as different as Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin. You've got the quiet, strong leader or the strong man leader. And Donald Trump seems to fall into that category. Or you've got Barack Obama, the very aspirational, inspirational type of leader. Why do you lead the way that you do? Where do you get your models? Is it from royalty and monarchy? Ancient principles of leadership? Is it from the church or another structure? Where do you get your models? Is it the military? Again, we've had those models, those patterns of leadership for hundreds of years. The way we do command and control, the way we mobilize people in an army to a task. Why do we lead the way that we do? We've now got the up-and-coming new economy like Mark Zuckerberg, people like that, coming up with a different take again. Leaders that don't wear suits. They've been with us now since the tech boom. Or do you model yourself on a different character altogether, a Gandhi character, a quiet, behind-the-scenes, non-confrontational type of leader? Or do you get your models from school, the Scouts, family, the role of parents, grandparents, senior figures? These models, some are good, some are bad, some were successful for a while, some leaders start out well and then seem to falter. Why is that? Some of them are aspirational and open and challenging. Others become controlling and bullying and arrogant eventually. There's lots of different ways to lead, aren't there? I'd like you to give you a little bit of theory, not very much. You've probably seen it before. It's from around the time of the millennium. Daniel Goleman and a team from Hay-McBurr surveyed 4,000 almost executives from a database of 20,000. And they attempted to analyze how people were leading. So they tried to break down the kind of key styles that they saw in operation from observation, from interview, and they also tracked the business performance of these execs. And then they were trying to track that back to the emotional competence of the execs, the EQ, and how that drove them. Here are the 6 styles. So here's the theory. The first style they identified was the coercive style. So if you have a coercive leader, she says, do what I tell you. So she has an idea of what needs to be done. It's very clear. There's no discussion. She knows when she needs it done and how. That's a coercive leader. Very clear. Sets the goal, describes it, needs it done this way by a certain time. That's the first style. The second style is, it's kind of related, but slightly different. This is authoritative. This kind of leader says, come with me. This leader knows where he wants to get to and brings people with him on that journey, but gives them some flexibility, some freedom as to how to get there. So it's an involving and collaborative style, but still with a clear vision, a direction in which to go. So we have coercive, and we have authoritative. The third style is affiliative. So if you have an affiliative leader, she's more concerned with relationship. People come first. It's about emotional bonds, it's about harmony, it's about team. We're together. It's a very relational style, very flat, not hierarchical. Democratic leadership says, what do you think? So if you have a democratic leader, he'll want to get the opinions and input from the team, want to consult. Democratic leader is interested in consensus and building consensus and taking a decision together. So we had coercive, we had authoritative, affiliative, democratic. Pace-setting leadership is an interesting one. So a pace-setting leader says, this is the way to do it. Do as I do now. So copy me. I'm the model. I'll show you how to do this. So a pace-setting leader is interested in standards and in showing the right way to do something and modeling it and having her people copy her. The last style of leadership that Goleman and his team identified was coaching style. They found this the least used, actually. And coaching style of leadership is primarily concerned with the development of people. So it's interesting because it's actually not concerned so much about the purpose of the organization and its mission and its strategy. It's about people and their growth, their development. A coaching leader tends to assign and delegate quite a lot and try to develop the people. One of the things that's changing in leadership, we talked about millennials, we also talked about another factor is the gender change. More and more women taking positions of leadership and senior management, senior leadership, CEO positions. I'll give you a piece of data, and I won't comment on it. Before the conference, I put something out on Pathable offering free coaching sessions. And people are taking them up. Every single person who's approached me is a woman. Every single person who's approached me is interested in working through some issue in dialogue in a structured way with a coach. Every single person is a woman. I'll let you ponder that one. What's your primary style? What's the usual way that you lead? If you've been watching these, I'll make it easier for you. I'll put them back. Have a look at those, and let's just take a break for a moment. Have a chat to the people around you about what you think your primary style is. Or if that's too embarrassing, talk about how you've been managed and the bosses that you've seen. I'm going to sit down for a moment and let you share what you think your primary style is. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we can get the room back to order. It's a futile task, isn't it? Should I be coercive? Shall I say, what do you think? Should we carry on? Or should I say, stop now, please? Is that too hard? I don't know. Yeah, so you've discussed and had a little think about the way that you lead and maybe about the people that are around you. Maybe you have a boss, maybe you have people that work for you. How are they leading? And how have you been managed in the past? Yeah, what is your primary style and why? And that's the thinking again. Think about why. Why do you lead the way that you do? We talked about these kind of influences. But there's also there's who you are, isn't there? I am a certain character. Certain styles suit me. Or I've been managed a certain way in the past. Or I hold certain principles and values about leadership. Leadership should be done in a certain way. That's often true. There may be the culture that you grew up in or live in. There may be the company culture that you are in, and it has a style. It has a way of leading. What is your primary style and why? It's sometimes good to do a little bit of self-reflection and think, why have I chosen to lead in the way, or that I do, or am I just on autopilot? Just kind of it happened, and it seems to work. Yeah. You may have found when you were discussing that although in theory, we like to categorize things and like to break things down, like when we do personality profiling, or we look at leadership styles and we say there are 6. And the reality is, it's not so simple. We are complex as individuals. Our business environment is complex. Our people are complex. And so you can have all these theories about, it's like this, it's like that. But quite possibly you already said, well, actually, I don't just have one style. And that's probably quite a common bit of discussion there. And the truth is, it's a little bit more mixed, isn't it? And leadership, it isn't a neat box. One of the reasons is that it's situational. So, we came into the room. Marta is the host. She kicks it off. She hands to me. I'm now leading the session at this point. If I started to have difficulty breathing and started to look unwell, and then maybe I might not stand very much longer. You better hope that somebody in the room has first aid training and is going to step forward and say, call an ambulance, get me on the ground, check me out. Somebody else takes leadership. That's situational leadership. Suddenly it's more important than Marta steps out the way. The AV guy, the student that's helping me, I'm incapacitated. Somebody's got to lead. Somebody's got to take care of me. So leadership is flexible. If there was a fire in the hotel, there would be coercive leadership at that point. Somebody in the building, the hotel staff or the fire department would say, out, through that door, not that one. Don't take your bag, go. So suddenly leadership can shift and change. And this can work in our organizations too. We don't always have to be the leader. We can pass that task around. It depends what you need, doesn't it? It depends what your skills are. It's worth thinking about it. Different leaders for different situations. And in the immortal words of Dilbert. Yeah. But the point is, you flex. And that's the truth, isn't it? That is the truth. You change your leadership style depending on the situation, depending on the needs of the day or the hour, whatever it is. Let me ask you another question for a little bit of reflection. What are you facing right now in your business? Is it technological rollout that you have to implement to keep up? Are you thinking of being acquired? Are you thinking of acquiring? Are you thinking of partnering? Are you thinking of dissolving a partnership? What are you facing? Is your business flatlining? Needs a boost? Is it growing and you're struggling to cope? Has it gone so far that actually you need to make some cuts and some tough decisions? What are you facing right now? Is it the ever-present price pressure? Is it new languages, new services that you need to offer? Is it diversification? What are you facing? I'll just give you 30 seconds on that one. Okay, before we get too heavily into business pressures, just hold in your mind what it is that you think is the top thing, or maybe the top two things at most, that's facing your business. If you just keep that in mind. We'll come back to it in a minute. So back to these 6 leadership styles. So Goldman and his team went further. They didn't just identify 6 styles. What they tried to do was to track their impact on what they called the climate of the organization. And that wasn't just a general, how does it feel? They looked at some hard factors, and it was a psychological definition. Things like, what responsibility in the organization do people feel? Are they committed to its purpose? Is the organization flexible and adaptable? Are rewards appropriately distributed and allocated? So they tried to correlate, as they looked at these executives and looked at their business performance and their organizations, what effect do these 6 styles have on climate? And they're all different, actually. So coercive leadership, it's really good in a genuine emergency, like a fire or a disaster, or in business terms, perhaps a turnaround situation. Right? So urgent action is needed, something very clear, things have to change, something different has to happen. Coercive leadership is very useful in those kind of situations. But what it does in the longer term is it tends to crush the organization, its innovation, its engagement and involvement. So people that work for a coercive leader in the end feel that their suggestions are not worthwhile. They only have to do what the boss says. He says, so we do. Yeah, last year I was working with a very driven, capable operations manager, not from this industry, and his boss was a coercive CEO. And even though this guy is very, very capable, has traveled around the country shutting down operations, hiring and firing, having a coercive boss meant that their relationship had deteriorated to such a point that he was finding it difficult to even operate. This coercive boss wanted documents done in a certain format, he wanted certain wording, he wanted things corrected, and he needed it by this afternoon. And coercive leadership tends to have that effect in the long term. So it has a short-term gain, but long term it corrodes climate, and it has a negative correlation with climate. Pace-setting leadership also has a negative correlation with climate in the long term, usually. So this is the one where you say, follow me, copy me. This is how to do it. And that can work if you've got a highly skilled team of experts, group of lawyers, R&D, accountants maybe. Then you can have a pace-setting leader who models the right behavior and the right way to do things. But the danger of a pace-setting leader is that people can't keep up. And they become demoralized, trying to match up to the standards of the pace-setter. And she's tempted to step in because it's not being done to the standard she would like or the way she would like. So she tends to take over, and people quickly, again, back off. So pace-setting leadership also, in the longer term, for most organizations, has a negative correlation with the climate. But the other 4 are actually positive. And each in their own way, they have strengths. So affiliative leaders, again, remember, very much relational driven, very much interrelationship, very big on praise and recognition. We were talking about that in one of the sessions earlier. So that can work really well. It's a good all-weather style. It correlates very well. It's very good for coming in when an organization's suffered, when there's been hard times, there's been maybe layoffs or some other kind of organizational crisis. An affiliative leader can rebuild harmony and bonds. It's very good. The danger, the downside of affiliative leadership is that it's personal. So it's all about relationship. So I was working with an affiliative leader just recently. As the CEO of an organization, he embraced values and he valued relationship, almost to the point of friendship with all his team and his direct reports, which is great until you end up in a conflict situation with your direct reports, and disagreement and opposition even. For an affiliative leader, that feels like betrayal. So it comes with some vulnerability because even the leader's emotions are involved in this. And the emphasis on praise and recognition is great, but often an affiliative leader doesn't like to tackle the awkward situations, the mediocre or underperforming tends to go unaddressed. And people can feel they're not getting clear guidance because they get recognition but they don't get kind of developmental feedback sometimes. But it's a very good all-weather style, as is authoritative leadership, saying, this is where we need to go, come with me. But work it out yourself. That's a very engaging style. It gets a lot of buy-in, gets a lot of commitment, and people will follow. So it's very good, again, as an all-purpose style. Goldman talks about this it's like a bag of golf clubs. You can reach for different clubs for different situations. And authoritative is the most generally useful style. They said it's generally going to work. Maybe one of the dangers with it, if you've got very expert people reporting to you, they can feel that an authoritative leader can get seem a little bit arrogant in a kind of they know, but actually if you've got a lot of experts, they need to be part of shaping where you're going, part of shaping the vision. Democratic leadership, which maybe depending on your cultural background, sounds like it should be maybe the most effective style. They found surprisingly it's pretty good, but it's not always brilliant. It's very good for getting involvement, for getting that engagement, getting interaction and opinions and input from the team. But one of the downsides of democratic leadership is it can end up in circles looking for consensus or hoping that a decision will arise. So it can be frustrating because it can be just meetings and scheduling another meeting to discuss again and scheduling another meeting, and that's the one to watch with democratic. Coaching, which isn't much used, is surprisingly useful in that engaging with individuals also helps the organization. Why? Because it's all about dialogue. So if you're working on someone's development and you're engaging with them regularly, then you're talking about goals, you're talking about skill development, and you're talking about where are we headed. So actually it works pretty well. It won't work if people are resistant to change. Coaching really doesn't work if somebody's not up for it. So it has to work in that sort of organizational climate or with an individual who is open to change. If they're resistant, a different style is needed. So back to your the question, what are you facing, which you were just thinking about. This one just for reflection for a moment. Quietly for yourself, what does your organization need of you now? What do your people need from you now, this year, or this quarter? What kind of style? Is there a style here you're not using but you could? It might be effective in the situation that you're in. Because as we were saying, you can flex and change, right? So you can add some of these things. It's not a fixed. Leadership isn't fixed. So here's an example, right? So your company, organization, has a complete disaster on a delivery to a customer. It went out late. They rejected it because it wasn't up to scratch. People had to work late and redeliver, and it was still not brilliant. The customer's angry. They've asked not to pay for the full project, and in fact, they're not coming back. You've lost the customer. As a leader, you can start with, on a Monday morning, that was a disaster. Thursday morning, a meeting for the whole team. I want your input. I want your analysis. What happened? What do you think we should do about it? Mandatory meeting, coercive leadership. Mandatory meeting, and this is what I want, coercive. When you get together, slide into democratic. Go around the room. What do you think? What happened? What do you think? Open, honest dialogue. Shift to affiliative. This is not about blame. We're a team. We're all in this together. We all want the good of the company. Let's now talk about what do we do to go forward. It's affiliative. You might move to authoritative at that point and say, okay, this must never happen again. We've lost a customer. For the rest of the year, we're playing catch-up. What do we do? What are the actions? What are your actions? What are your actions? What are your actions? What are you committing to help us never have this again? So you're into authoritative. And lastly, from the whole debate and the discussion, as a leader, you may identify one or two people who really weren't doing well there, either in the meeting or in the debacle that had happened. And you may think, hey, that's a coaching assignment I need to make. I need to work with that person one-on-one and develop them. You've got 5 styles of leadership all mixed in there. And that's what Goldman's team found. They found that the most successful leaders with the best correlation of climate and financial performance had at least, had up to 4 leadership styles in regular use and could shift and move between them. Can you change your leadership style? Now, you wouldn't be sitting here in this room unless you at least half believed that, right? And there might be all sorts of objections. Well, but I lead the way I've always done. I'm too old. I know now there's going to be nobody under 30 in this room, or practically nobody, apart from Melissa, the student at the back, maybe. So can you change? Can you change your style? It's not easy because these are more like habit changes. This is not about acquiring a bit of knowledge in a presentation and thinking, I'll do that now, because you tend to fall back on your established patterns. Can you change? Well, yeah, as I say, you're here. You're already exploring leadership style. But I just want to put it to the room. I don't know if we can use a roving mic. What helps you change? When you need to change some behavior, habit, pattern, can you advise each other? What works? What helps?
I believe that changes, we change style as we grow, as the company grow, with different situations, with things, with the growth of the company. Depending on the size of the company, change your leadership style. So I found myself at the beginning of the business, I've been in the business for 30 years. So it is at a certain time, I am authoritative. At another time, becomes affiliative. So it changes and moves depending with the growth of the company, size of the company, employees. Sometimes you have old ones, and then all of a sudden a lot of turnover. So you're starting having young ones. So coaching is a style. It's developing. It's changing. With the company age, with the leader age, and experience.
So sometimes circumstances can force a change. Okay.
Yeah.
But and beyond that, then, if you want to leave this room starting to change and to pick up a new golf club, can I ask again, in your experience, what has helped you change in the past? When you want to change a habit, start something new, what works for you?
I think being accountable to somebody else helps you to stick to it. Okay. And I think that's often a problem with managers and leaders, that we are not necessarily automatically accountable to anyone else.
Okay, that's an interesting suggestion. So find someone and be accountable. Karen.
I think one of the first steps has to be, for me, awareness. So really paying attention to your own behaviours. Really giving a lot of thought, like we are doing today, I suppose, into how you behave, how you interact with people, and then thinking about how you want to be, and really, adjusting your behaviour accordingly.
So self-awareness, self-thinking, what else? Alessandra?
Also maybe reactions from people that you're leading. So maybe if you're using a certain leadership style and you're not really getting the reaction or the the response that you expected or that you want, then you can, start analyzing why. And it may be the person that you're leading, you need to actually adjust to different personalities. But watching also the reaction from the people that you're leading.
So monitoring the effectiveness and watching it. Yeah. What else is going to make you successful in changing?
Being clear about your desired outcome.
Right.
And therefore trying maybe different things to bring that about. But if you know where you want to be, then being able to try different styles to achieve that.
So you mentioned two things there: being clear, and then experimenting. And there's nothing wrong with experimenting, is there? Just try something out. Does it work? Yeah. Any other suggestions? What in your experience, what has helped you make a change? Whether that means going to the gym more often or eating less or whatever. Yeah.
If I may, I would like to add my 2 cents about it. I cannot pretend that I changed my leadership style conscientiously. It's just sometimes things do not work, and I try to adjust. But I wanted to mention a very good role model. You didn't mention. There was a image of Queen Elizabeth II, but I thought about leadership style about Queen Victoria, because she presided over one of the most successful periods of the British Empire, but she assumed throne when she was 18, and by necessity her leadership style probably was democratic, no matter how ironical it sounds, but she engaged other people, much more knowledgeable people, because obviously at age 18 you do not know a lot about statecraft and other things. So situation, talking about situational leadership, she had to use minds of other people, and she engaged them. And so I think in your next presentation you should mention Queen Victoria. And
thank you. I'll take that feedback for next time. Yeah. I guess we're coming close to the end of our time. Are there any other suggestions of what would help you change, or any final remarks? Marta, anything? Okay, we have a little time. I'm just between you and lunch, so yeah. It's a precarious place to be, isn't it?
So yeah, I have the mic, yes. No, something very short, something that really helped me, or I realized my personal change in leading our team was when I stopped reacting to whatever situation had happened and took a deep breath and had a clear vision of what I wanted, what we wanted as a company, and acting instead of, reacting to situations and things.
Pause for thought.
So maybe we have to set our goals, and I hope that in 10 years I can spend more time with my family, with my friends. That's my main goal. So it means, and at the same time, I want to run a successful company. So if I want to do that, I have to change or modify my leadership style, because it could be very practical to be coercive, but it doesn't work if you are not there constantly. So if I want to do that job from distance, involving a good middle management, or later on maybe a CEO instead of me, then maybe I have to start to think about what kind of leadership style to follow.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, like you were saying at the back there, about getting the goal clear, or about circumstances as they change, you modify your leadership style. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you all for your attention, and look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so if you have questions, so we don't have to follow that last question. We have 10 minutes left, so please go ahead.
I just wondered if there was a particular leadership style that you would recommend for people that work remotely, because you would talk to them differently to how you would talk to someone that was in the same building as you.
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? Remote working and what differences it makes. If we're looking at the styles, I guess with remote working, you need an extra effort perhaps on the affiliative type of connection. And that requires a bit of extra work when you're not sitting at the lunch table together regularly or whatever. That probably needs a bit of a boost. These are just my thoughts. Some of you will have experience of this, of course. Similarly, democratic. It might be useful to employ that, get engagement, to increase engagement. So you're getting opinion and getting input on things. Coaching is tricky over a distance, but it can be done. I know that from experience. But yeah, the two that come to my mind would be working extra hard at affiliative and democratic. I'd offer that.
You've asked us what leadership styles each of us has, but also wanted to know what is driving us. So the question is, why do you think it is so important, or important in general, to know which pattern we follow?
To know which
which pattern or which path we follow. Why is this consciousness so important?
Yeah, it's interesting when you think of the feedback that people were giving just now as to what helps you change. Understanding is helpful. So if you wanted to learn to shoot basketball hoops, you could stand in a basketball court for 100 hours, firing balls at the hoop and adjusting your throw and the spin and where you hit the ball onto the backboard or whatever. And you'd gradually get better at it. You turn the lights out and do it in the dark, you will never improve because you're getting no feedback. And it's not a conscious process, you're just randomly firing things. So I think if you're starting to self-reflect and think about how you lead, and then you, as people were saying, monitor reactions, try experiments, see what works, take a deep breath, you're much more likely to improve than if you're on autopilot, just doing the same old thing, and less consciously. I think awareness, and that's a very coaching thing, awareness is the first step towards change usually. Have I answered your question?
Yes. Can I ask one more? Yeah. What leadership style would you recommend in creative industries, in the world of audiovisual translation? Because that's my game.
And again, I don't presume to speak about your industry, but only from my my impressions and from working in localization over the years. With creative people, I guess you've got to think about, like with project managers, they can kind of come with a general style. And it's very broad generalizations, but so if you have creative people, I can imagine you're going to need democratic kind of involvement because they need to be part of creation, part of shaping the thing. So I can imagine that's going to be very important. There may be times with a creative deadline that it's coercive. This has to be turned around overnight and it has to be ready for the client tomorrow. Sometimes you'll get that because of the kind of extreme deadlines you get. Those are the two that come to mind there. There's nothing wrong with any of these, really. Affiliative helps generate team spirit, esprit de corps. But I think, as with so much about leadership, the Dilbert cartoon there, is to think about the type of people you're managing. So if they're project managers, they need a lot of autonomy to get the result, but they need the goal to be very clear. So authoritative works very well, perhaps, for them. With creative, you might be looking at more democratic because the need for involvement in shaping something is very important. Those are some thoughts that come to mind.
What if we add a filter of cultural differences to everything? So we have creative people, we have people from 10 different nationalities. How to approach this kind of challenges?
That's a very good point, and I forgot to make that earlier, that cultural overlay, of course, does have a big part to play in all of this, because in some cultures, coercive leadership might have been the norm in the way people were, raised in that culture with a governmental or leadership structure in the country, or very democratic. We're in the Netherlands, I believe consensus is very important here. So I suppose I would suggest treating it like we just did when you're thinking about types of, is it IT guys, is it project managers, is it creative individuals? Think the same way about cultural. If you're dealing with a Japanese person, how do they react well to being managed? What are their expectations of leadership? And try to just get inside their head a little bit. It's okay to configure yourself a little bit differently for different situations, for different people, for different nationalities. It's demanding, though, to be flexible.
It is, which is good. Thank you.
We're into lunchtime, by the way, so yeah.
So in our company, 3/4 of the team are under 30, including myself, and I manage.
Oh, well done, you're here.
So I manage a team of project managers, and I also find that the coaching style for millennials, how I would want to be led, I lead.
Right.
Working with some of the more experienced and senior team members, particularly the localization engineers, I can see democratic approach coming into play. But in your experience, working with millennials, which of these styles do you think is the most impactful?
Right. Now we're opening up a whole different debate, aren't we? I'll give you some thought on this. That what the millennials apparently want. So they want work-life balance. They want to be treated in a kind of equal way. They like to be self-directed. They like to know why they're doing what they're doing, that it connects to some purpose. Aren't we all millennial then? I have this kind of doubt about the whole millennial thing, because in a way, perhaps the only difference is that for millennials, it's been possible to work in that way. And for those of us who came to the workforce earlier, it just was less possible. It wasn't so easy to have working from home and drop the kids off and then do some email afterwards, and we just didn't have those flexibilities. But for millennials, it's been possible, and sometimes I'm wondering whether are they so different really? Has human society changed so fast? Genetics and the expectations. So yeah, in managing millennials, I think the same rules apply. Again, you're just trying to sort of sense what's going to work. And yeah, the trouble is in management, you don't always give people what they want. You can't always, because the organisation has a purpose. It has to be results in the end. But where you can, you would give some autonomy. We're getting into this is a very different debate, I guess. Millennials and how do you motivate people, which is slightly different from this topic. But again, some use of the democratic and affiliative can work. Coaching can work if they're up for it. If a millennial is very much into self-development, which again is a growing feature of the workforce, then coaching might be something. Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks for your engagement. Great.